Hello, I'm Jack, and today we're going to be talking about growing roses in pots. So the first thing is you need to make sure that you've got a pot which is deep enough to sustain the rose. The biggest mistake people make is to shove a rose into a tiny little pot. Obviously by doing that it's not going to be able to retain enough moisture, there's not going to be enough soil there to provide food for the rose. So we've got a pot here which is around about 18 to 20 inches, which is ideal as a minimum. Obviously the taller the rose, the deeper the pot. So I've cheated a bit here. What I've done is, you might want to try this at home, is I've got a pot exactly the same size that the rose is grown in. I've topped up a little bit to the bottom there, and then I've placed the pot on top and filled in around it. Makes potting them a lot easier, so you just carefully slip that one out. Pop the rose out of its pot. There we are. A nice root system there, it's not root bound at all, so no need to tease the roots out. And we just place it into the hole where the pot was, and then we just top up around it. Obviously the key thing with growing roses in pots is they are a caged animal. You need to ensure that you are providing the water and the food for them, so their roots cannot venture outside of this cage and it can't find its own food or water. So we're just topping it up, and we want to leave about an inch or two away from the top, so that when we come to water we can pour a whole can in there and it will just sit on the surface of the water and slowly drain through, ensuring that the whole pot becomes soaked. With roses grown in pots, you're going to need to water a lot more often than when they're in the ground, at least 3 times a week. If it's really baking hot, you might need to be checking on them daily and giving them an entire can each day, in fact. And as I said with the feeding, especially with them in pots, drench feeding is not necessarily a great idea. It's a good idea to do it once or twice a year, but for the rest of the time you want to be foliar feeding. The problem with drench feeding, where you're pouring it into the soil, is that it's all going to run out of the bottom and you've lost a lot of that expensive feed that you've bought. Whereas if you mix it into a spray bottle and you spray that over the leaves of the plant, there's a greater uptake by the plant, and obviously it's more cost effective that way. We're going to pop into the top of the pot here a couple of handfuls of the after-plant rose feed. There's a little bit of mycorrhizal root grow in there as well, which will help to increase the root mass of the rose and thereby its take-up of nutrients and water. So you just put a couple of handfuls into the top of the pot and then just work that in with your fingers, and it's as simple as that. You want to use this probably 2 or 3 times a year, and then in between you want to alternate between the Country Garden Roses Plant Magic and the Uncle Tom's Rose Tonic. The Plant Magic you can use on all of your garden plants, including your vegetables and fruit, and even your house plants. Uncle Tom's is more rose specific, and that contains potassium phosphate, which is said to help with fending off diseases like black spot. So that's really all there is to it. Once you've potted it up, give it a good water, make sure that it's sat on some pot feet so that it allows for good free drainage, and then sit back and wait for your roses to come.